I wish my name was Hunter Biden. I could go abroad, make millions off of my father's presidency. I'd be a really rich guy.
Do you think we couldn't find that? Don't sell yourself short, Don Jr. You've made billions. That was Donald Trump Jr. on with Sean Hannity, yucking it up back in 2019, perhaps manifesting being able to exploit his father's name for massive profits. New reporting in the New York Times shows just how massively Donald Trump Jr. has exploited his father's presidency for personal profit and gain. From that blockbuster New York Times report, quote, "What sets apart the latest moves by Donald Trump Jr. is how he and his business partner, through their investment firm 1789 Capital, are cashing in on the policies of the current administration openly and without apology. Many of the companies that 1789 has invested in have large government contracts, while others, like Polymarket, have benefited directly from new Trump policies or rollbacks of existing laws. The firm bought shares in some of the most coveted private companies before many went public, often by leveraging their political and business connections to secure a stake or to help boost the company's sales." New York Times also reports this, quote, "Just 2 years ago, 1789 managed a few $100 million. It now oversees more than $3 billion. Its main investment fund generated returns of roughly 200% as of June 30th, according to a person familiar with the firm's performance." In the statement to the New York Times, Donald Trump Jr. said that as a private citizen, he's free to invest however he wants and is doing nothing illegal. And as Donald Trump and his administration asked Congress for billions more in defense spending for his deeply unpopular war with Iran, the Washington Post reports that the Trump brothers have invested in companies that stand to profit from exactly that spending. They write this, quote, "Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump have amassed a portfolio of defense technology startups that are benefiting from new Pentagon priorities and spending. Funds linked to the Trump brothers have invested in more than a dozen defense tech companies and other firms seeking businesses from the Pentagon and federal agencies," a Washington Post analysis finds. Most of the investments have taken place since Donald Trump was elected president for a second time. The companies have collectively generated at least $3.2 billion in direct government business since the sons invested in an additional $3.1 billion in future contract options. Some have gained coveted spots on short lists of pre-approved contractors that can bid exclusively on up to nearly $200 billion in future work. Company representatives who responded to the Washington Post's request for comment stated that the companies had secured their business with the federal government through rigorous Pentagon contracting processes. I want to bring in Norm Eisen. He's the co-founder and board member of Democracy Defenders Action and publisher of The Contrarian. Also joining us, political analyst and Bloomberg Opinion senior executive editor Tim O'Brien. Tim, I want to start with you. Were either the Trump sons successful investors before Donald Trump was president a second time?
You know, Nicole, there's this old Steve Martin joke, I think from like the 70s, that went, I'm going to teach you how to become a millionaire. Step one, find $1 million. And the Trumps have updated that basically to, I'm going to tell you how to become a billionaire, become president of the United States. And then your children can also share in the riches. Because the only reason that Donald Trump, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, and his two eldest sons are raking in the money like this is because Donald Trump sits in the Oval Office. There's absolutely no other reason for it. Donald Trump Jr.'s first job when he finished college was as a bartender, and then he went to work for his father. None of it involved investing or managing money at this scale with eye-popping returns that most professional managers who have a lifetime of experience and expertise and insight into financial markets and on and on and on could never match. And every excuse that the Trumps put up to explain this away, that somehow in Donald Trump's first administration, because they were so interested in public service, they bypassed being able to make money, so now they decided to make money, which is completely a bogus explanation for what they're doing, or that it's not illegal. Well, it isn't illegal, but it should be banned because they're doing this at the expense of the American people. They're doing it at the expense of our national security. They're doing it at the expense of our global reputation. and no one is constraining them, including and especially members of the Republican Party. So when Jim Jordan and Josh Hawley are busy chasing Jack Smith around the block with these shallow, baseless complaints that he is somehow ethically challenged, and they don't say a word about the multi-billion-dollar grift going on in the White House right in front of them, we're in a perilous time.
We can't be more mad, though, than Trump's own voter. And I wonder, Norm Eisen, you've been on these issues. You've sort of been a moral player in the political arena for your whole career. How do you make people understand that he's robbing them? This isn't money that is zero sum. They're enriching themselves at the expense of the people who sent Donald Trump to Washington to make their lives better.
That's right, Nicole. And when you look at the sheer sums that are involved, the 1789 Capitol, it's like a natural experiment. When Trump came back into office, the Don Jr.'s firm was at about $200 million. Now it's got assets under management of over $3 billion. Is it just a coincidence that over this past year and a half, Don Jr.'s business acumen has suddenly exploded? I don't think so. Tim has levied a devastating indictment of the business capacities of the Trump children. I think that the sheer scale of the numbers here are starting to break through to the American people, that this is not what they put Donald Trump in office for. The president himself has made billions on crypto, while investors have lost almost twice that amount. So when you combine these scandals, and the numbers are scandalous, including Pentagon investments, direct investments in Trump family businesses by the government, when you combine them with the other corruption scandals we've covered, whether it's the Epstein files or the Trump slush fund or the Kennedy Center appropriating it for himself, Trump's own voters are getting the idea. Gee, maybe he's not in the Oval Office to help me. He is there to help himself and his family. And that's why you see Democrats ahead on the generic ballot. There was a poll today, 11%, Nicole. Trump's own base is contributing to that hemorrhaging.